Let's go ahead and start with the first option by selecting Test. Now, if you have already created or imported a test and it's not deployed somewhere in your course, it will show up in the Add Test box. And you can just select it and click Submit to deploy it. Since I don't have any tests in this course yet, I'm going to go ahead and click the Create button to make a new test. I'll need to give it a name, and if I want to, I can include a description and instructions for the test in the description box. Once you're ready to start adding questions, go ahead and click Submit. This will take us to the test editor. Here we have 3 buttons at the top of the test editor, all having to do with questions. If we hover over Create Questions, we can see all of the built-in question types for Blackboard. Questions that have a definitive answer, like multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, etc., are all graded automatically by Blackboard. Let's go ahead and make a multiple choice question. I'm going to hover over Create Question and click on Multiple Choice. The first box is optional and allows you to set a title that will appear before the question, maybe like the title of the section that the question is based on. The question text box is where you actually input the question. For example, my question is, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Perfect. Now, this is our favorite text editor, so we can format the question however we like, and we can even include images and other multimedia and hyperlinks. Once you have typed in your question, if you scroll down, we have some question options where we can customize how the multiple choice part looks. We can set the answer numbering, the answer orientation, vertical or horizontal, allow for partial credit, etc. We can even have the order of how the answers appear be randomized for each student. So one student can't be like, hey, what's the answer to number 2? And another student can be like, oh, it's A, because it's going to be different for each student. So in section 3, we actually start inputting our answers. Let's see. The first answer is about 9.9 meters per second. And then next is 24 miles per hour. And lastly will be African or European. Now, I just need to make sure I mark the correct response. Perfect. Now, you'll notice that I have more answer boxes than I do answers. Since the number that we shall count is 3, no more, no less, I'm going to click the Remove button next to the last answer box to remove it. If you need to add more questions, you can click on the first box at the top of the answers section and pick up to 20 answers. Now, I don't know about you, but if I saw up to 20 answers that I had to pick from, I'd be kind of upset. So just use wisdom when deciding your questions. The next section is feedback. You can provide different feedback based on how they answered the question. For example, if they got it correct, I'm going to say, I tip my hat to you, sir. You have bested the bridge keeper. For incorrect answers, I'm going to give the feedback, you should watch some more Monty Python. Lastly, I can categorize the question, which is great if I want to keep track of what topics I have covered with my assessments. I can also make some notes that only I can see as an instructor. Once I'm ready, I'm going to click Submit to go back to the test editor where I can add more questions or finish creating the test. The other options we have are the reuse questions, where we can use questions from other tests we have made or make sets or blocks out of our pool questions. We can also upload questions if you have them. Once we are done adding questions, we can simply click OK at the bottom to take us back to the test selection screen so we can finish deploying the test. Now we see that our test is listed in this little select box here. Let's go ahead and select it and click Submit in order to start deploying it. Now the test deployment options are very similar to every other item, but with a few extra settings. First off, we have the normal name and description that we can edit if we wish, and then in section 2, we can specify the test availability settings. If you want your students to be able to take the test, make sure that the link is set to available. The Add New Announcement option will create an announcement and email your students to notify them that a new test has been added to the course. If you want to give your students more than one attempt at taking the test, you can choose multiple attempts and specify the number of attempts. Conversely, if you want the students to have to finish the test in one sitting, you can choose Forced Completion. Now, this option can cause some problems for students if they have, say, bad internet connectivity or computer problems, as their test session will be over if they lose their connection or if their computer crashes. The better option is to use this timer option and set auto submit to on. That way, if they need to, they can switch computers or restart their computer, or if they lose their connection, they can continue taking the test as soon as they log back into Blackboard. The timer will still be going the whole time, however, so they will only have the amount of time you specify from the moment they start the test until it finishes and automatically submits their work for them. Now, if you want your test to only be available on a certain date and time, you can specify the time here. As long as you have the link set to available, it will automatically hide the test from the students until the date you enter here, unhide it at the time you put in the first box, and then will hide the test again after the time you put in the second box. Lastly, you can specify a password for the test that students will have to enter in order to take the test. The third section is for due dates. These dates do not change the availability of the test, but it will make the test automatically show up in the student's to-do list and calendar. And if you use the default homepage for the course, it will also show up there. Setting due dates can help students keep track and prioritize what needs to be done in all of their classes. Now, if you want the test to be part of their grade, make sure that you have Include this test in Grade Center score calculations checked. If you want to have a pre-test that is just for the student's benefit, you can select the second option to hide the test from the Grade Center completely. This means you will also not be able to see the answers the students inputted either. The fifth section allows us to specify what students see after they finish taking the test. By default, just score is selected, so students will only be able to see their final score. If you want them to be able to see what answers they provided along with the correct answers, and the feedback you provided on the test, make sure you also select the rest of the options. Lastly, we have Test Presentation. Here you can set how the questions are displayed. You can do it one question at a time, or all of them at once. You can even make it so students cannot go back to a previous question once they have advanced to the next one by disabling backtracking. I'm not sure why anyone would do that to a student. It's just mean, but you can. You can even randomize the question order for each student, so they can't cheat off of the other students as well. Once you have the deployment options set, go ahead and click Submit. Now when students click on the test, they will see the information for the test and can begin taking the assessment.